Howdy ho, neighbor Joe, and welcome to Week 24 of Major League Baseball Power Rankings. Today is Sunday, September 15th. This is Week 24 of 26, so we'll have two more Power Ranking videos before the end of the season. And as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, everyone's going to get much more interested in how that's going to fare, so we'll get into that. For the purpose of today's Power Rankings, the best week was Oakland Athletics at 6 wins, 1 loss. The worst week was the LA Angels at 0-6. They got blanked between 3 games with Cleveland and 2 games with Tampa. Season finale today. We have now, the playoff field is slightly thinning. Slightly. We still have like 6 teams in the National League vying for those 2 playoff spots between Washington, Philadelphia, New York, Milwaukee, Chicago. I think that's about it. 5 teams. Meanwhile, the American League is a lot more defined. While you do have the outlier of Cleveland only 2.5 games back, and they have a better shot of making the playoffs as a wild card than they do as a division winner at this point, they're still 2.5 games out, and you've got teams in Oakland that are just tearing it up, hence 6-1 this week, and Tampa Bay, with which the more road games they play, the better it favors them. They're just not good at home. Having said that, yeah, they had road week this whole week, and they didn't do that well anyway. They went like 3-2 on the road this week, so they're still very much in the second wild card. So let's go ahead and get into our power rankings here. Most of our teams here are no longer in the playoff race, and seeing as like the only 10 teams who even go to the playoffs, it's 1/3 of the league, and with the 6 teams still vying for 6 spots there, that makes about half the league kind of out of it. So let's go ahead and get into this. Detroit comes in at number 30 again. Detroit, yes, they're rebuilding. Yes, they try to sell off their only decent prospect in Boyd at the trade deadline. No, there were no takers for the high price they were offering. But what they have favoring them here is Ron Gardenhire, the former manager of the Minnesota Twins, is at the helm here, trying to rebuild what they had. Now, you don't have an owner like their former owner, Latish, I think his name was. I have to look it up. My pronunciation could be absolutely horrible, too. Who was just trying to pour everything into getting a World Series for his team before he passed away. And the new ownership group, his son or something like that, is not putting as much vested interest in win at all costs as he was. Having said that, they do have some decent management under their belt in Gardenhire and his staff there. So yes, you also have aging players like Cabrera, who are just way past their prime. While they're rebuilding this year, the whole first row here, some of them are going to rebound faster than others. This is going to be a slow one, but it could be promising. You don't know. Coming in at 29. After they dismissed Showalter, they brought a new management who was just suffering through a catastrophic season of prospects and rookies who don't know what they're doing. And Baltimore fans are probably, by and large, not paying that much attention to Baltimore these days. At the same time, teams who play against them and don't sweep them out of the park are getting a lashback of their potential. If they're taking 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3 in some of these series, you're getting a feel for what they can do. So we'll see how they continue to grow. The Miami Marlins, under new ownership, there went on major fire sales. You're all aware from previous videos, and the thing that sort of strikes me as odd is you're talking about a management team that came up in the 90s dynasty that was the New York Yankees, albeit the CEO Derek Jeter, and he knows all too well that he, Posada, Rivera, and the like all came up as wet behind the ears into a team laden with seasoned veterans in O'Neill, in Brocious, in Martinez, in et cetera. So, and in Wetland, for that matter. So he knows all too well you can't win it solely on young, promising prospects. You need to have that veteran experience. and you have some veterans on the team, but they're not veterans with either the right talent, the right leadership, or they're missing something. So we'll see how they do in the offseason here. Coming in number 27, the Kansas City Royals. Our team with which are trying their own method of rebuilding with some of their prospects. We'll see how that works out. You got the team of Hall of Famer Suns. Bo Bichette is a phenomenal all-star caliber player. Definitely something they need to build around. After getting rid of Stroman, they have pitching that has shown dominance against Boston and has shut down New York and has flashes of brilliance. Nothing consistent. It's something to build around and see what they can do going forward. Coming in at 25, Seattle. They're seeing a resurgence of Felix Hernandez. You don't know how many years you're going to get out of him before he gets so far past his prime, he's just straight up on the decline. They need to build around that. They need to bring in quality pitching prospects, bring in some bats who know how to get on base. You don't need a ton of sluggers to succeed in this business. You do need to focus on base percentage plus slugging. Slugging definitely does help, but fundamentally, if you can do a merry-go-round on the base paths, we're talking Moneyball strategy, baby, you can do it. If Oakland can do it, you can do it. And Oakland has been tearing it up with undervalued talent. They need to get better management under their belt if they really want to be able to turn this around, or every year they're going to be fighting as a rebuild. Coming in number 24, the Colorado Rockies had a decent week going 4-2, 2 out of 3 against St. Louis, playing a little spoiler role there, taking 2 from San Diego. It's a sort of safe face build for next year kind of series there. This is a team with which I had false hopes that they might be able to turn around against in the second half of the season, turn it on, become a threat for the wild card, take on LA, all that jazz. It happens. I'm not always right with everything. And, you know, even the analysts who spend 40 hours a week studying this stuff up and down all year round, even they get this stuff wrong because there is a human element to things. But it's fun to at least make those predictions and then take ownership when it falls flat. And also enjoy it when you get it right. It's fantastic. Coming number 23, the White Sox. They have some seriously strong talent in Abreu and company. It's a matter of building. They sold off Chris Sale to the Red Sox in exchange for prospects. They need to get those prospects up to speed. They need to build their rotation. When they become more of a threat pitching, then it will disguise some of the weaknesses they have with their lineup. Coming in at number 22, Pittsburgh. Now, they have some quality talent on this team between their pitching with Archer, between their hitting with Bell, between Cabrera, between a bunch of players that when you put them all together, you can get the chemistry right, they can go on a tear. However, this year they've been horribly inconsistent. But from a third-party perspective, it's a lot of fun to watch to see how they can show up one day and not show up the next day. From a fan perspective, it is exceedingly frustrating. I totally get that. I have had that with multiple teams that I follow and I enjoy. And I'm considering doing during all season a favorite teams to show you, all the fans, from 1 to 30, what teams do I root for more than others? Where it is completely subjective. Totally get that. And if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below and I'll be happy to go into that. Coming in at number 21, the San Francisco Giants are no longer in the conversation. They really haven't been, but they held on to Bumgarner, so they're getting prospects because they figured, okay, we started going on a run here. Let's build on that, see what we can do. Well, it just wasn't enough. They didn't have enough of the right stuff long term to maintain that, keep that going, and so they've fallen completely out of the conversation. From a Giants perspective, you have two options. You either build around Bumgarner as he gets aged and declines in performance, or you say he's coming up with the end of his tenure. Do we want to see what we can get and build around that nucleus? Coming in number 20, the LA Angels. If they haven't already, because I don't think they have, they're going to absolutely lock up Trout before he can hit free agency. They're going to keep on to him. What they haven't been doing is building around him too much. They're trying different stuff, granted, but that stuff isn't working. They're a highly inconsistent team. They had an 0-6 week. They are in prime position to play spoiler for some teams. Sorry, I've been fighting a cold for the last couple of weeks. But their season is a loss at this point, and it's time to see what they can do with the offseason to make next year a little more promising. You definitely do not want to waste Trout's prime years. He can because he's only one man. He can only make so many catches and hit so many home runs. The rest of your team around it has to contribute. It has to be next man up. It has to be the merry-go-round. It has to be like, okay, you want to walk him? Let's hurt you behind him. Let's give you something in front of him that's like, okay, you need to deal with this guy because I don't want Trout. You know what I mean? Coming in at number 19, that is some of what San Diego is doing with Hosmer, with Machado, and with some other pitching and hitting players on their team. They just haven't. The Machado trade just wasn't the final piece in the mix like getting Aroldis Chapman was for the Chicago Cubs. They're going to need more than that, and predominantly they're going to need that around pitching. Fundamentally, when you're playing in a league with the Dodgers and with Arizona and others that have significant pitching depth, have significant hitting depth, and are on farther progressed tracks of rebuilding, they need to shore up that pitching. Their bullpen might be in better shape than our pitching rotation, but either way, you're down here at 19, and you're at, I didn't even write down their record on the season because they're so far out of the playoffs. They're like 5th place in your division. I mean, if you want to be competitive within your division, if you want to check the playoffs, you've got to build that nucleus of the rotation there. And even having said that, other teams like the Yankees, their rotation has been spotty at best sometimes. Their bullpen can lock down games. And speaking of that, Tampa Bay coins that opener strategy where they use bullpen guys to pitch more often than not. You can get away with a strong bullpen. They don't have it in San Diego. They have got some good guys and other guys not so much. Coming at 18, the Cincinnati Reds. Went 3-3 this week, dropped 2 out of 3 to Seattle on the road, split Arizona. They are in a position to play spoiler with a season finale in Arizona, as Arizona has some slim playoff hopes, being that they are 4.5 games out of the second wild card. I say slim because you're now teetering in the last 2 weeks of the season. You've got 10, maybe 15 games left. That is a huge gap, especially when the fact that you have to climb over the New York Mets, the Philadelphia Phillies, the potentially the Washington Nationals, and then you've got the Chicago Cubs sitting there at a number 2 wild card spot. It's a lot of teams to leapfrog. That means even if you win out, you're banking on your scoreboard watching to see if that helps you at all. Because even if you win and those teams don't lose in the right combination, it's not doing you any good. Coming in number 17, the Texas Rangers. Also a team for spoiler, not so much in the division because Houston has run away with that division, and Oakland seems primed for the wild card. So they could do some damage on the Oakland side, but that's if they can actually beat Oakland, and I'm not seeing that. Minor just had a rough day, and he was their most promising prospect at the trade deadline. Does that speak for his whole season? No, it doesn't. But when you hear headlines about specific players having breakouts or having failures, that also tells me that, yeah, that one player is shining on their team, but also shows me there's not a lot of depth there on the whole team. So just because you have the opportunity to play spoiler doesn't mean you have the ability to. Coming in number 16, the Arizona Diamondbacks went 1-6 this week, getting swept out of New York 0-4 and splitting with Cincinnati 1-1. They are 4.5 back on the second wild card, and less like, yeah. So they are, as I was mentioning, about having an outside chance to get in this thing. I just don't see it happening. There's too many teams they have to leapfrog, but they have shown in off and on weeks since the Greinke trade that they still have a decent nucleus of talent. they could certainly be a force to be reckoned with next year. Not going to happen this year. Talk about teams that are stacked and loaded. The Philadelphia Phillies have been all promise and no punch. Sorry, Phillies fans, because 3.5 games out, you're almost out of the conversation, but not quite. 3.5 back when you have to leapfrog your own division, being half game back of the New York Mets and being a few games back of the Washington Nationals. On top of which, you still got some National League Central teams in the Brewers and the Cubs to leapfrog. It's a tall order, and I haven't been seeing a whole lot of consistency with them. It's great if you can go into Miami and win a game, or it's great if you can go into Chicago and win a game. What I need to see is consistency, and having a 3-3 week going 2-2 against Atlanta and 0-1 against Boston on Saturday is not showing me enough consistency of power to leapfrog. You're doing a lot of scoreboard watching and you're doing a lot of fingers crossing, but you're only 5 games over 500, Philadelphia. With a team as promising on paper as you are, tighten it up. Tighten it up, or you'll be sitting on the bench. At number 14, the Boston Red Sox are so far out of the competition, they're no longer even being recorded with their standings, but they went 2-4 this week, dropping 2 out of 3 at Toronto and winning a game at Philadelphia. This is a team that has more ability to play spoiler than they have to actually contend. And as a result of how they failed against New York to try and get back into the division, they went ahead and fired their general manager, Dombrowski, with whom helped build Detroit during the Tisch ownership years into a contender. He definitely knows his baseball, and last year helped the Boston Red Sox manufacture a World Series championship. So the fact that they just dumped him cold makes me wonder: is it because they had such a significant drop off after the championship series, or were there other problems going on there? Having said that, because they actually do have the ability to play at a very high level, they can play spoiler, and by beating Philadelphia and anybody else who are playing down the end of the stretch, especially if they have future games with Tampa, and I know they don't have any more with New York, they have the ability to knock teams out of the playoffs, which would be at least some sort of consolation prize for Boston fans. Coming in at number 13, the Milwaukee Brewers are 1 game out of the second wild card, and after dominating Miami, taking 4 out in Miami and then splitting with St. Louis, the 4 games definitely helps. And you are tied with Oakland for the best week, going 6 wins and 1 loss. However, beating Miami is all good and fine. But then when you're up against St. Louis, a team you're directly chasing, and you split the first 2 games, you need that season finale. You've lost Christian Yelich for the year, and you have depth around your team, so you definitely have shown with a 6-1 week you can do it. And you are really, really on the verge. Now it's time to say, okay, next man up. Yelich is down. We're not out of this. We're 1 game out of the playoffs, so let's turn it on. Let's take that season finale against St. Louis and make a run at this. You got like a dozen, 2 weeks, maybe 10, 15 games left in the season to do that. You're running out of time, Milwaukee. You really are. Coming in at number 12, the New York Mets. 3 games out of the second wild card. They would have to leapfrog a bunch to get into the conversation here. But being 3 games out with 10 to go, it's not possible. But you're doing some scoreboard watching. You're only 6 games up, above 500. You just took 4-0 against Arizona. You just split 1-1 against LA Dodgers. You had a 5-2 week. It's not shabby. I'm not going to say you're doomed. I'm just going to say you had a strong week, and you can't rest on your laurels. You need to keep the gas pedal to the metal and see if you can get yourself into this conversation, because 3 games back, when you're running out of games, it's asking a lot. Not that you can't do it, but it's asking a lot. And as far as predictions are concerned, I just don't see you making it. Too much in not enough games to play, in my opinion. Coming at number 11, the first wild card holder in the Washington Nationals have no shot in hell of catching the Atlanta Braves. And I think yesterday Atlanta just clinched their division ownership, so they've locked and sealed that gate into the playoffs as division leader. But they did have a good week. They went 2-1, 2 out of 3 against Minnesota in Minnesota, and they laid an egg, dropping to Atlanta, which is probably more or less what sealed the deal for the division there. The fact that you just dropped to your division leader. Having said that, even if you do maintain your position and host a wild card game and win that, and then survive LA, which is asking a lot right there, you still have to deal with the winner of the St. Louis Cardinals and Atlanta Braves. I mean, is it possible? Nothing is impossible. Is it probable? Not much. So, that brings us to the top 10. And this is where I thought at the beginning of the season you're going to have all your season contenders in your top 10 here, because you are going to get 10 teams in the playoffs between 4 from the wild card and 6 from the division winners. So I figured, okay, based upon my point system, I'm projecting that all 10 of your playoff contenders are going to be there. Well, so far, with an outlier of Washington, which is I expect it was entirely possible that there could be 1 or 2 teams not in the top 10 of my board that were playoff bound. And right now, as it looks, you have a number 1 National League wildcard team here. Now, of all of these teams here, none of them are currently in a position to actually go to the playoffs. You have teams in Philadelphia, New York, Milwaukee, and Arizona that are in the competition and fighting their way in, but they're not in yet. But they are also in your top 15. It shows that, as weird as the point system might look, with San Francisco being all the way down here, it is reasonably accurately predicting your true powerhouses. So, let's go ahead and get in the top 10. And coming in, number 10, the Chicago Cubs. They are your second wild card team for the National League, so they are actually in that spot there after going 4-3, splitting 2 with San Diego and taking 2 from Pittsburgh. They are increasingly unlikely to catch St. Louis, with whom are only 3 games up. So it's not like they're out of the competition here. They're very much in the conversation for the division, but the way St. Louis has not been letting up on the gas, they might just simply run out of games to catch St. Louis for the division, and then they will be on the road to Washington. So, either way, they're going to be on the road, because St. Louis will end up going to Atlanta the way things go now, so therefore, road team no matter what. Could they catch Washington? Maybe they're only 1 game back of Washington, so they could end up hosting a wildcard game. But do you really want to put all your hopes on a wildcard game? I think not. Coming in number 9, the St. Louis Cardinals, the National League champions, who I knew somebody was going to be coming at the All-Star break, was going to be coming out of the woodworks, challenging the division, and taking everybody by storm. I initially projected that could have been Colorado, maybe Milwaukee, but as it turns out, it ended up being their St. Louis Cardinals, who came up from the middle of the pack, 3rd place in your division, and now own your division. Granted, only 3-game lead, but the way they have been pedaled to the metal and making things happen, albeit only 3-3 week, they have not been letting up enough on the gas to let the Cubs threaten for the division too significantly. It's enough as they're all knocking on the back door, but a 3-game cushion is a 3-game cushion. They look primed to take that division and then head to Atlanta to take on the Braves, which is not exactly going to be an easy challenge. Coming in number 8, the Cleveland Indians are 2.5 games out of your playoff second wild card here, but Washington's in the playoffs, so there you go. You've got your outliers here, where you have a team in the top 10 who has an outside chance of getting the playoffs, or 2.5 games back, but after dropping games to Minnesota, they're not helping their own chances. They were at home, they dropped 2 games to Minnesota after taking 3 in LA. When you can't beat the team you're chasing, you've got no shot of winning your division, because you're banking on them losing to other opponents because you couldn't take care of business yourself. And fundamentally, if you can't beat the team you're chasing, you don't deserve to pass them anyway, in my humble opinion. So, there you're looking at a team looking for a chance to catch the number 7 Tampa Bay Rays, who are your second wild card right now, and fundamentally that favors Tampa Bay to be number 1 wild card because their home record has been dismal. It reminds me of the 2009 Philadelphia Phillies, whom went into Yankee Stadium for the World Series as the Road Warrior champions. They tore it up on the road, and they carried that ability to win on the road all the way to the World Series. Didn't help in the World Series, but they got there. And how many teams can say that? Only 2 teams every year can say they actually got to the World Series. So there's something to be said for being a very strong road team. Having said that, they went 0-2. They dropped 2 out of 3 in Texas before taking the first 2 in LA. So just because they're a very strong road team does not mean that it's an absolute for them. But that is going to be the best chance to make depth in the playoffs, to go on the road to Oakland, take care of business there, then go on the road to New York, take care of business there, etc., and repeat. Coming in number 6, the Oakland Athletics have used a 6-1 week to climb into the first wild card spot and settle into their position quite nicely. They do have teams chasing them in the Cleveland Indians, but beyond Cleveland, you don't really have any serious threats for the wild card, which means fundamentally, all they have to worry about is maintaining that lead over Tampa Bay to be able to host that wild card game. They have a very, very outside chance of catching Houston, but fundamentally, Houston is got a significant lead, 97 wins to your 89 wins. You're not likely going to. There's just not enough games left to catch them, especially with the fact that Houston is no slouch. They're fighting for the first wild card. They're not exactly resting on the laurels here. So, having said that, they have the chance to keep that, to fight for a chance to maintain that wild card spot over Tampa, host that game, and take their chances in New York. Because I'm presuming they're going to be the first wild card there. It could very well be they end up having to go back down to Houston and play their own division for the division series as the wild card coming into the division series. We'll see what happens. Fundamentally, do I think that Oakland favors Houston or New York? I would say because they play more games against Houston than they do against New York, and because it is a far shorter trip for them going down to Texas versus going all the way across the country to New York, they're probably going to be rooting for Houston to take the number 1 spot so they can have that familiarity and that closer distance for them. So I guess you'll be scoreboard watching and keeping up with your own pace to make sure you maintain that hosting ability. You still have to deal with Tampa in the wild card game, so gear up, fellas, because they are a very good team on the road. Coming in number 5, your Atlanta Braves, coming in with a bunch of no-namers and excelling beyond anyone's imagination, splitting 4 games with Philadelphia and then taking 2 games against Washington to seal the deal on taking that National League East. They've had a phenomenal year. I wish them all the best. I absolutely project they're going to defeat St. Louis in the divisional series. Just my humble opinion. Feel free to put your comments section below, Cardinals fans and Braves fans. Let me know what you think about that. And I'll be happy to report on the playoffs during the course of October and see how things flow from there. But I definitely see that it's a very high potential for Atlanta to be traveling to the Los Angeles Dodgers for the National League Championship Series. Coming in number 4, the 3rd division winner, the Minnesota Twins, have an outside chance of catching New York or Houston for the number 1 seed in the American League. But seeing as New York has a 7-game lead and Houston has a 6-game lead, I just think there's not enough games left in the season, no matter how many times you beat up on Cleveland or Kansas City, to in your own division, be up in your own division in order to get there. Having said that, at the same time, okay, so you're going on the road to somebody. Is it going to be Houston or is it going to be New York? I don't know, but it's now time to finish strong and prepare for that playoff series, because whether you go against Houston or New York, you're still going to be facing an uphill battle. You have fundamentally, you definitely, no questions asked, have the ability to outslug anybody. If you're pitching going to support that against the likes of, let's say in Houston, you're Garrett Cole, you're Justin Verlander and the like. In New York, do you have the ability to compete against your James Paxtons, with your Masahiro Tanaka, with your Luis Severinos? Yes, he was activated. Severino was activated from New York. If he's as good as his reports promise, that's going to be a challenge coming into the playoffs because you know he's going to make that rotation. Being on the IL all year does not disqualify you from the playoffs because if you were not on the IL, you are active roster, and therefore active roster on August 1st makes you eligible for the postseason. Coming in at number 3, your Houston Astros, with which went 4-3, dropping 3 out of 4 to Oakland at home, and then taking 2 from Kansas City. That set against Oakland hurt to Houston, because you had a prime opportunity to cap out as the number 1 seed when New York failed to sweep Detroit or Toronto, and now you're looking at a position where, okay, you're now a game or 2 back from New York in the number 1 seed conversation here. There's still 2 weeks of games play, 1 or 2 games that can be set on 1 weekend series, realistically speaking, so there's absolutely nothing set in stone for the number 1 seed there, but fundamentally for Houston, you definitely want that home field advantage. It didn't help you much against Oakland, but now you've learned that every team, no matter how good you are, still has some work to do. Coming in at number 2, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They've clinched a playoff spot. They are on the verge of taking the division. I think they actually do have the division at this point. I think the Y means for division title, X is for playoff bound. I could have that reversed. Either way, it was a foregone conclusion they were going to make the playoffs. It was a foregone conclusion that they were going to take their division. And now it's a matter of getting your team ready to go, because number 1 seed in the National League is more or less locked and loaded there. But with LA being 3 games over Atlanta, they still have the Atlanta breathing on their heels for the number 1 seed there, so it's not like they can just simply coast in the postseason here to maintain home field throughout the National League, but they're also a game or 2 behind New York and Houston. Should they make it to the World Series, they want that home field advantage. There's a team that has feasted like a gourmet meal on home field advantage, much like Houston and much like New York. You want that home field advantage. You need to take advantage of beating those subpar teams in the last couple of weeks to seal a deal there. Coming at number 1, your New York Yankees. A team that I swear to God needs to fire their fitness and conditioning coach there, because they lead the league into players on the IL. They're just right now trying to get players back. They just activated Batanz. They just activated Severino. Jordan Montgomery, I believe, is being activated. You've got a lot of players coming back. Whether or not they're going to be up to par to play postseason ball when they have been playing all season long remains to be seen. But the fact that we have 29 different players, I know last week I said 39 players, I looked it up after the fact, and it was only actually 29, which is still atrocious. You've got a 25-man active roster, and 29 players have been on the IL, including multiple players being on the IL multiple times. It's like, dude, what are you guys not doing in New York that you're getting everybody injured? You just lost Gary Sanchez to a groin injury yesterday. Are you freaking kidding me? What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Okay, so that's enough ragging on New York. Fundamentally, despite all their injuries, they are still managed to rack up the most points according to the system of 3 wins for a regular season win, splitting the overtime extra inning points, which is what makes this one all look so screwed up here, because the extra points don't, while the standings go by wins and losses, there's extra divvying up the extra inning points makes things look kind of weird. Totally get that, but it will still make things kind of interesting too. Having said that, with New York, You got a team that has excelled in every aspect of the game because that whole next man up routine for New York has worked as well as the opener strategy for Tampa Bay. It has been on fire for them. They're pedal to the metal. They've got a slight lead for #1 seed in all of Major League Baseball, hence #1 here. Now you've got the rest of the season, a bunch of teams that are sub 500. You have no threats the rest of the season in LA, in Houston, in Minnesota. All those are gone. They're behind you. Now you have a bunch of subpar teams. You've got Texas, you've got Tampa Bay, you've got LA coming in there. Excellent opportunities to play spoiler against New York. Can New York take care of business, lock that up, and ride their phenomenal home record into the postseason? We shall see. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Who should be higher? Who should be lower? What do you think of how your team is performing? If you're a playoff team, let me know how you think you're going to stack up against your competition there. Who you think is going to be where. I love the banter. I love talking baseball. Could do it all day, every day. I absolutely love bringing this content to you. It is a highlight of my week. Second only to following the statistics and the storylines in between videos. So, if you just happen to be happen upon this video via Google or YouTube, please like and subscribe. It greatly helps the channel. I'd love to know what you think about what I think. And until then, have a great day. Enjoy the Sunday games. And I'll talk to you next time.